call this meeting of the House Judiciary Committee to order. And before I begin, I would like to ask everyone's cooperation during the meeting. Please silence your phones. And to members of the committee, please speak into your mic during roll call, when you have a question, or when you're casting a vote. Please mute your microphones because of the camera sensitivity, and also please mute your cell phones or turn those off. Would our clerk please call the roll?
Representative Banta, Representative Blanton, Representative Bratcher,
Here.
Representative Bray,
Present.
Representative Burke,
Here.
Representative Dietz,
Present.
Representative Doan,
Present.
Representative Flannery,
Here.
Representative Herron,
Here.
Representative Kulkarni,
Present.
Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative Maddox,
Here.
Representative Mosier,
I'm here.
Representative Nemus, Representative Petrie,
Here.
Representative Rawlings,
Here.
Representative Sharp, Representative Stevenson, Representative Wilson, Vice Chair Decker,
Present.
Chair Elliott.
I am here. So obviously this is our second meeting of the 2024 session. We have one bill on for consideration. That's House Bill 5, sponsored by Representative Jared Bauman, an act relating to crimes and punishments. And before I invite Representative Bauman to the table, I do want to discuss some rules that we will abide by. Each side, both the proponents and the opponents, will get 45 minutes to testify and for committee questions. How many minutes? And then at the conclusion of that 90 minutes, this committee will take a vote. So Representative Bauman, the floor is yours to begin your presentation, and I know you have a lot of guests with you, and I'll let you decide as you call them up and so forth today. So thank you.
See if we get this going. Can you pull that?
And there's a committee substitute
Yes, sir.
that was sent to members yesterday afternoon. Is there a motion to adopt the committee substitute?
There's an objection to adopting a committee substitute without declaring the differences.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And the substitute is adopted. So you may proceed, Representative Bauman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of our team, thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 5 this afternoon. I'd like to introduce our team. It includes House Majority Whip Jason Nemus, Chairman Kevin Bratcher, Chairman Ken Fleming, Representative Emily Callaway, Representative John Hodgson, and Representative Susan Witten. These members are here in support, obviously, and will answer any questions or make any comments as needed. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we thank you as well for your time and talents today. As you will likely recall, we had the pleasure of presenting this bill before you back in the December interim joint judiciary meeting, and we learned a lot based on your feedback at that time, and as well as feedback from constituents and stakeholders. So we look forward to your feedback again today on these critical reforms. So as we discussed back in December, crime is impacting every single Kentuckian. With this bill, House Bill 5, we are reasserting some basic and simple truths, and that is that criminals, not society, are accountable for their actions, and society has the right to protect itself from the criminal element. And so that criminal element has become an all too normal part of our world today, as we know. And across generations, we are failing to provide the necessary foundation for Kentuckians to achieve prosperity. This this critical foundation of public safety, security, and protection from those sunsetting in our state that want to retire gracefully and peacefully in their community, to my generation of Kentuckians that are working and raising a family here, and for our most important generation, for our kids and grandkids that are growing up in a world today in an environment that normalizes criminal behavior as a regular part of our daily lives, as we all hope and we all pray that one of our family members or our loved ones isn't the next victim or statistic. And while crime is impacting the life of every single Kentuckian today, too many of our Kentucky families have experienced horrific tragedy at the hands of violent and experienced criminals. This bill focuses on accountability for serious criminal behavior to ensure we limit the number of future victims, to ensure there are as few of these stories that you are about to hear as possible. The families you're about to hear from have experienced the most ultimate and horrific tragedies imaginable, the loss of a loved one to crime. Whether our family and loved ones return home to us each day shouldn't depend on the misfortune of not being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It should depend upon a strong societal foundation for public safety, security, and protection, a foundation that supports families with a strong and effective criminal justice system. And at this time, we would like to welcome the Trout family to the table to testify. So if you guys would please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Marcy. My name is Marcy Trout. Madeline Trout was my daughter.
My name is Peyton Trout, and Madeline Trout was my sister.
Thanks for the opportunity to be able to tell our story today. March 1st, 2021, a day that changed our family forever. It was on that day that our daughter, Madeline Trout, a 17-year-old senior and varsity cheerleader at Butler Traditional High School, was taken from us. While the evening of March 1st, 2021 seems like a blur and is still a horrible nightmare I cannot wake up from, the details are fresh and vivid in my memory as they were on that night. Madeline had just finished her practice with cheer and was taking her brother, my son Peyton, to work from baseball practice. He was a sophomore at Butler at the time. After she dropped Peyton off for his part-time shift, she began her usual route home on Dixie Highway. It was not 5 minutes later, after her brother was dropped off, that my daughter would be hit head-on by a wrong speeding, stolen truck. The driver of that truck refused to render aid and tried to flee the scene, but was wrestled down by several individuals who just so happened to be in the area at the time. Soon after, we found out that this man was not only under the influence of alcohol, but several different illegal substances too. This man and his reckless decisions took everything from me and our family that night. Madeline was a daughter, a sister to two younger brothers that she adored, a granddaughter, a niece, a cousin, a girlfriend, and a friend to so many. Words to describe Madeline: she was happy, loving, and kind with the biggest heart. She had a bright future ahead of her and was so excited for her next chapter of life. She enjoyed helping people and being there for anyone that needed it. My girl kept a very busy academic and extracurricular schedule and also found time to work 2 jobs in places that she loved. She had plans to attend Bellarmine University in the fall of 2021. She would now be in her junior year of college to be a nurse. As a high school senior, Madeline was already working with an internship at Norton's Women and Children's Hospital. There is no doubt that her calling in life was helping others in their times of hurt and crisis. Madeline's smile always lit up in whatever room she was in. And still, almost 3 years after her passing, I'm reminded of just how much joy and happiness that smile and positive energy brought to those she knew and loved. Whether it was the most important person in the room or the person that few talked to, Madeline was a friend to all. Now, only a month and a half away from the 3-year anniversary of my daughter's passing, Madeline is still the light in our lives and still making a difference. And while there are many days I feel like giving up, she's the bright light that keeps me going in this world without her. And we will always live the way we know she would want for us. Nonetheless, here I am with a mission and on a mission and a purpose. I am here today to fight on behalf of Madeline, for the hearts of my family, for the families across the state of Kentucky. See, this tragedy could have been avoided. The driver of the stolen truck was arrested on February 2nd, 2021, for stealing a vehicle with also being on drugs. The criminal and liability to society was released as he was bailed out by the Louisville Bail Project with no money out of his pocket and no accountability. This man has a file that was multiple pages long. No background information or check was placed on this man, nor were there programs set up or enforced to ensure that he would not go back and repeat these decisions, which he did. The reason my daughter is not here is at the hands of the Louisville Bail Project and its supporters. The reason that my husband will not have his daughter to walk down the aisle. The constant struggle and heartache of my two boys when they think about their lives without their sister. The long days where it is all I can do to move and sleepless nights. The what ifs and the should have beens is at the hands of the Louisville Bail Project. At the end of the day, it is not the Louisville Bail Project and their supporters whose lives are drastically changed and altered because of the decisions of the criminal. It is ordinarily families such as mine. While bail groups pay for those who have done a crime, it is people like myself that will pay for a lifetime. My family and I are here today in support of House Bill 5 in hopes of stopping organizations like these from releasing criminals back into the public with no supervision or accountability. Our family, this community, and our state will forever be denied of all the good that Madeline Trout would have brought and all she had to give. Every single day we will miss her, and we will continue to do great things in her name. And if you can do anything in this life, live like Madeline. Thank you.
March 1st of 2021. The day my sister Madeline Trout was killed in a head-on car crash by someone who should never have been let out. I was the last person with my sister before she was killed. Something I never thought I would ever have to say. I remember parts of that day like it was yesterday. I remember the songs we were listening to during the car ride to Chick-fil-A. I remember the laughs that we had and the embarrassment we had because of her horrible singing. But I wish I could say all the memories of that day were good. I remember the last I love you we said to each other. I remember the screams of people that I loved the most because they were all in pain. I remember most of all seeing my family being torn apart due to a reckless act by a foundation that doesn't care. My sister was my best friend. She was loving, caring, and supportive of everything you can ever think of. She was the person I could go to when I needed a shoulder to cry on, when I needed a helping hand, and when I needed a mentor, but most importantly, when I needed a sister. I believe in second chances. I believe that people should and can be helped, but the Louisville Bail Project is not the answer. I speak for my family when I say that we care about everyone that comes into our lives. We're the most caring people that you can find, but when something and someone is taken from us too soon, we're going to search and find justice. We're not going to stop. The Save Our Kentucky Act is the next step. Not only Madeline's Law, but all of the legislation that is in this bill. Madeline's Law has been here before, and unfortunately wasn't passed all the way, but if it had been, then many people's lives would not been affected. I believe in my whole heart that this law is the right step to fix an ongoing problem. If you were in our situation, would this even be a question to yes or no? Would this be something that you can say no to? Be honest with yourself. We all know that we need to fix the state of Kentucky. This is not for the Republicans nor for the Democrats. This is for us, the people of Kentucky. Now let's take a stand. Let's make our homes safer. Bring more people into our communities. I do not want to raise my future kids in the Kentucky that we have today. The Save Our Kentucky Act needs to be passed. My sister Madeline would want to make a difference. Even though she is not here physically, this is the difference. This is the change we need. So let's make it. Thank you.
Thank you to the Trout family for your testimony. Would like to, at this time, welcome the Luxemburger family to the table. Hey, Marcy. If you would please introduce yourselves to the committee.
is Kate Luxemburger. My son, Jake Luxemburger, was killed September 16th, 2023, due to a man fleeing from the police. He hit the car my son was riding in at over 115 miles per hour, and it killed him instantly. Jake was an amazing center fielder. He lived for baseball. When he wasn't on the field, you would find him playing Fortnite or riding his bike with his friends. Jake excelled in school, where he was currently a 5th grade student at Kenwood Station Elementary. Jake advocated for those he encountered, and he took pride in helping others. He made sure to include everyone in every aspect of his day. Jake was a leader, and he was a true friend to everyone. He could fix anything, and he was always ready to take action to help others. Jake's personality was infectious and lively and incredibly fun. Jake was not only a son, but he was the best big little brother to his older sister Riley. His energy on a tired day would brighten the mood, and our boy, who always had the biggest smile, wanted to make everyone laugh. September 16th was a normal Saturday morning. I took my daughter to cheer practice and I returned home. Jake had woken up for the day. I got dressed in my workout clothes and Jake came downstairs with me like he did every day to watch me work out. A couple hours later, he left the house to go shopping with his grandmother to buy birthday gifts. At 3:46 p.m., I received a text message from his grandmother stating that there had been an accident. I remember walking downstairs to tell my husband and my daughter that Jake and his grandmother had been in an accident. And then her text stated, Jake was not talking. I thought it was a fender bender, and I thought he was just freaking out from being in the car wreck. I jumped in the car. I didn't even grab my purse. We drove half a mile up the road to the accident site. I remember getting to the scene and thinking to myself, gosh, there must have been another accident because this can't be them. That's when I saw the car. I have never in my life seen a vehicle as damaged as the one Jake was riding in. We all ran up to the scene and we were stopped immediately by the police. We told them who we were and they said, stay here, let them do their jobs. We're going to get them out. I remember hitting my knees and just praying that he was going to be okay. The fear I had in those moments is something I never wish on any parent. Then everything becomes a blur. I remember the officer coming up to my husband and saying the words, I'm so sorry for your loss. I was numb and I was in shock. I didn't believe it. I begged to see him. Just let me see my baby boy. They asked me many times if I was sure, and I demanded, let me see my baby. I walked into the ambulance and I saw him. I hugged him and looked at his lifeless body. He had a broken arm, and I could see where the airbag had burnt his clothes, but he was just laying there. He looked like he was asleep, and it wasn't real. We were told to say our goodbyes because my daughter was having a panic attack and somebody needed to go with my mother-in-law to the hospital. When I walked out of the ambulance, my daughter was on oxygen, being assisted by EMS due to the shock. My daughter and I were driven home by the sheriff, and my husband Trey was urged to go straight to the hospital to support his mother, who was the driver of the car, who was critically injured in the accident. Sheriffs, Oldham County Police, Fire and EMS, Kentucky State Police, a chaplain, and a coroner were all present. I will never forget the number of first responders on that scene the day. One person's choice from fleeing from the police has destroyed our lives. How do we go on? He's never coming back. My baby boy is never coming back. Our family will never be the same, and his bright, amazing future was stolen from him. Our days are full of tears and a level of pain I could never comprehend before. A pain I've never felt in my life and a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. I urge you to consider passing Jake's law, as it will help prevent similar tragedies as that of our son. If Jake's law can help keep the family intact and without pain like this, it will be worth it. Jake's murderer had previous offenses for trying to evade the police, and he was released previously on probation. If Jake's law had been in effect, my son's death might have been prevented. This person may have thought twice about fleeing from the police. We have to do better as a whole. We have to do better to protect our communities. We have to take action for our children and hold our citizens to a higher standard. God willing, increasing the penalty for fleeing the police will prevent people from disregarding the law and shattering a family as it has done to ours. There's no sugarcoating it. Our son was recklessly taken from our family, and anything that can be done to prevent another funeral of a child should be. Jake's law in House Bill 5 will keep my son's legacy alive and bring peace of mind to others who might encounter a similar event in the future. This bill will hold our citizens to a higher standard and provide victims experiencing a similar tragedy reassurance that there will be justice served for all involved. Thank you.
My name is Riley Luxemburger. I am Jake's older sister. On September 16th, due to someone driving at a high rate of speed, fleeing from the police, I lost my brother in a terrible car accident. Jake was a 5th grader at Kenwood Station Elementary School. All he ever wanted was to live up to being just like my dad, Trey Luxemburger, constantly following in his footsteps to be just like him. He was more than just a brother. He was someone I could rely on, laugh with, and joke with. He's been with me through thick and thin. Even though he was my little brother, he was someone always offering guidance and encouragement along the way of his short 10 years of living. The memories he gave me have been the most valuable thing he could have ever given me. The day was pretty, a normal day. I woke up, got dressed, and went to cheer practice. Later that afternoon, I came home to see my brother had left to go shopping with my grandmother for his birthday. That was just 9 days away. I had just sat down in my living room where my dad was sitting, and my mom walked downstairs and told us they had been in a car accident. Thinking to ourselves, this is just a fender bender. We drove about 30 seconds to where it was, and we stopped. I immediately started running as fast as I could, tears running down my face uncontrollably. The moment I saw the car, I was stunned. Thoughts couldn't even form into words. I ran up as close to the car as I could until the police pulled me back, telling me I couldn't go near the car. We waited and we waited. It felt like forever. My mom was on the ground. My dad didn't know what to do. I just sat there thinking, no way, right? Like, no way he's gone. No way my 10-year-old brother had passed away. As I watched the state trooper walk closer and closer to me, my heart sank. My heart sank so deep into my chest, it felt like I couldn't breathe anymore. He looked at my parents and told us he was so sorry for our loss. All I remember was I couldn't do anything but stare. I stared so hard I could see right through him. At this moment, I was so devastated that I didn't think I'd be able to do it anymore. Thinking back to myself, what is a world without my little brother being by my side no matter what? A world where I could come home every single day and not scream up, Jake, I'm home. I felt like my world had been crushed. 30 more minutes later had gone by, and we watched my grandmother get pulled out of the car. So relieved, but that she was okay, but still thinking, what about my brother? Many minutes went by, and they told us that he had passed, and we were allowed to go see him in the ambulance. I couldn't do anything but have a panic attack. I was on the side of the road sitting there having to be put on oxygen because I couldn't breathe. I was told over and over again that I shouldn't see him, and I knew I wanted to see my little brother, no matter what. I walked into the ambulance and saw my brother. I didn't know what to do at the moment, so I kissed him as many times as I could. This whole thing just felt like an unbelievable dream. As I was told I had to leave with the sheriff to go back to my house, I didn't think I was going to be able to just leave my brother. I knew he needed me. He needed his sister to be with him, keeping him safe. But I left and went back home to just sit in the front yard of my house and think about what just happened and how this was going to impact my life in so many ways. I walked back into the house and could barely see, barely talk. I could barely even keep myself up. I never thought that this would be a story I would have to tell anyone, but this is one of the many reasons I hope my story shows the need for the decisions to vote yes to this bill. No family should have to ever survive this. We should be planning cheer comps and watching baseball games instead of wondering how we will survive the next day. I hope that if this law is passed, others will not have to feel the uncertainty and experience the unknown of questions that I have. This bill would bring a level of understanding about the outcome for people who flee from the police and commit crimes like the ones that have happened to my brother. Thank you.
And you certainly have our sympathy, and we're very sorry, both your family and to the Trout family. Thank you for your courage in coming forward today to offer that testimony. Representative Ballman, you have used almost 20 minutes of your time, and I know you have several other witnesses here, and this committee will need time to ask questions. So I just want you to be mindful of the time, and I know you have several other witnesses. So you're at 20 minutes, you have 45 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
And the
Chairman.
committee will need some time to question.
Thank you. Thank you to the Luxemburger family. I would like to now welcome to the table Rachel Conley to testify. It's on.
My name is Rachel Conley. I am the widow of Deputy Caleb Conley, who was shot and killed in the line of duty on May 22nd, 2023. He was just 35 years old. Caleb was an excellent deputy, and he took his job very seriously. He loved his job. He'd wanted to work in law enforcement ever since he was a little boy. His dad and uncle both worked in law enforcement, and he wanted to follow in their footsteps. And he eventually achieved that lifelong dream when the Scott County Sheriff's Office hired him 4 years ago. He worked tirelessly to become one of the best deputies in his department. He would never boast about his achievements, but in the 4 short years he was with the department, he received many awards. He did his job, and he did it well. Caleb was also in the Army Reserves for 8 years and served 1 tour of duty in Iraq as a combat engineer. He was very proud of his service to Scott County and to his country. Outside of service, Caleb was an uncle, a son, a brother, a father, a husband, and a friend. Together we have 2 children, Raleigh and Olivia. Raleigh was 10 and Olivia was 5 when that tragic day unfolded. Caleb was an exceptional father. He loved to make them laugh and spend as much time as possible with them outside of work. He absolutely adored our children. The day Caleb was killed was a normal, beautiful, sunny day. It was his day off, but he decided to go in and work overtime. I spoke to him 15 to 30 minutes before everything happened. I told him I was going to our nephew's baseball game, and he told me he was almost finished with work and he would meet us there. A little after 5, I was at the game and started wondering where he was. No more than 5 minutes after I started wondering is when I got the call. The call came from my best friend, and I remember her saying that Caleb had been shot, he was in critical condition, and on his way to UK. My heart started racing. I hung up with her, and someone else called to tell me about Caleb, and the third person to call was one of the deputies. This was all within 5 minutes of each other. The deputy picks me up at the ballpark. I climbed in the back seat. I said, "Okay, all I know is Caleb's been shot, he's in critical condition, and on his way to UK." The man in the passenger seat gets in the back with me, and we take off. At the time, I didn't know the man in the passenger seat was the chaplain. He looks at me, introduces himself, and says, "Caleb conducted a routine traffic stop, and the individual pulled a gun, shot Caleb, and he has since passed." All I could say was no. He said yes. I said no, but he insisted and said yes. At that moment, my mind went blank. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt sick and empty. I was in complete shock, but I knew I had to keep it together, so I immediately started making phone calls. We get to UK, they take me inside, and I sit in a room surrounded by first responders and chaplains. I knew some of them, but not all of them. People tell me things, but I can't remember most of what they said. I remember one person asking if I had any questions, and I responded, "Have you caught the guy?" And he said, "We're working on it." He left, but when he came back less than 30 minutes later, he told me they'd caught him. After that, they asked if I might want to be alone, and I did. And they all got up and walked out, and that's when I broke down. I also remember doing his honor walk out of the hospital. They loaded him into the ME's van, and I remember saying to my mother-in-law, "I have never been surrounded by so many people and felt so alone." But even after all that, after being told that my husband had gone to work and had been murdered, nothing compares to the moment that I had to tell my children. It was after 11 when we got back from Frankfurt. I picked the kids up, and my oldest kept asking why there were so many people there. And I told him we'd talk about it when we got home. We get in the car and head home, and he's persistent about why all those people were there and why his dad wasn't there. And I remember exactly what I told them, but to this day I don't know how I got through it. Riley said, "Now can you tell us what's going on?" And I slowly started to speak and said, "You know your dad went to work today, right?" "Yes." "You know he was just working overtime, right?" "Yes." "Well, your daddy stopped a car. He got out of his car and started to walk up to the car he'd stopped. Well, that person had a gun. That person pulled the gun on your dad. They pulled the trigger, and your daddy went to heaven tonight." And the next thing that came out of my children's mouths was a sound I had never heard before, and I pray to God I never hear it again. It wasn't a cry, it was a wail, a screaming wail. And it is a sound that is burned into my memory, and I'm glad no one else was there to hear it. They cried the whole way home. That is what haunts me more than anything I've ever had to endure in my life. That was by far the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I never intended on telling that story publicly, not unless I had a good reason. And I think this bill is a good reason to share my story. My story is just one of many. There are far too many stories that are just like mine. Our first responders are not just a badge. They are human beings with families and friends who love them. Many of them have spouses and children that worry about them making it home after each shift. I tell my story because I hope it has an impact on your decision. The people who murder our first responders have no idea of the consequences of their actions. And I'm not talking about their court dates or their trial or their sentencing. I'm talking about the families. We, the families of the fallen first responders, we are the ones who suffer the consequences of these crimes. And I believe if this bill is passed, it will make a difference. If people know that if they murder a first responder, they will go to prison for the rest of their lives, or they will receive a sentence of death, maybe then they will stop killing our first responders. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, please, I'd like to check the time again.
28 minutes.
Okay, thank you,
28
sir.
minutes.
I'm going to go a little out of order here then. If I could please call to the table our Commonwealth's Attorney Courtney Baxter and County Attorney Jenny Oldham, please.
Good afternoon. Courtney Baxter, and I'm the Commonwealth Attorney for the 12th Judicial Circuit, and that includes Henry, Oldham, and Trimble counties. I want to thank you all for having me here today, and thank Representative Baumann, Nemes, and Hudson for sponsoring this bill and this committee for taking on the issues of violent crime and repeat offenders through House Bill 5, the Kentucky Safer Act. As a Commonwealth's attorney and a legislative liaison for our association, I want to express our gratitude for including us in this process from the outset, allowing us to weigh in with feedback and proposals. We generally support the bill and look forward to continuing to assist with its drafting and passage. After many years as a Commonwealth's attorney, combating proposed legislation that makes the penalties less severe for those that cause the most damage in our community. This is a law that will provide us prosecutors with the much needed resources we need to hold those offenders accountable to make our communities safer and ensure justice for crime victims and prevent the tragic deaths like Jake Luxemberger, Madeline Trout, and Deputy Caleb Conley. The catastrophic loss suffered by these families is absolutely unimaginable. They have paid the ultimate price, the loss of an innocent family member, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, a husband. No family should have to bear such a loss. And I believe that this bill will help us as prosecutors and law enforcement to ensure safeties in our communities so we don't have to hear these horrific stories anymore. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm Jenny Oldham. I'm the Hardin County Attorney and also the President of the Kentucky County Attorneys Association. So I come to you today from two perspectives. First, as the president of that association, which represents 111 county attorneys in their different communities with different demographics, cultures, and issues in their particular communities, and also as the county attorney in my community that I'm elected to serve. As a 72-page bill, this bill's not perfect yet, but I want to thank the drafters for including prosecutors in the discussion early on and for taking on these issues. I've been in the county attorney's office for 27 years, and I would like to think at the end of that career that I've left it better than I found it. Listening to the Conley family, the Luxemburg family, and the Troutman family makes you wonder. And so what I've seen in that 27 years is an evolution, and it's come from the legislature that we need to care more about the offenders than the community. And that is not working. Prosecutors believe in second chances. We believe in redemption. I would encourage you to contact your county attorney and your Commonwealth attorney and have those conversations. We do believe in those things, but we cannot have our hands tied, and we cannot focus more on the rehabilitation of an offender than we can innocent life and innocent communities. And so that's why I'm here in support of the bill on behalf of my association and on behalf of myself and my community. We want to return to accountability for offenders, appropriate discretion for prosecutors. We are accountable in our community. We're elected just like you. If we are not exercising that discretion appropriately, there are consequences in elections. But I would encourage you that this bill has to take the next step. We have to have these discussions, and the time is now.
Thank you, Courtney Baxter and Jenny Oldham. And at this time, I'd like to
I don't know. We're at 33 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think we're
I just have one more. Just one more.
We're going to have some time for the committee.
If I could please call Ryan Strahl to the table.
So very briefly.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Strahl, and I'm the Vice President and Governmental Affairs Chair for the Kentucky State Fraternal Order of Police. It's an honor to join these representatives and these families here today in support of House Bill 5. The FOP, if you don't know, represents 10,800 law enforcement professionals in this state and over 350,000 law enforcement professionals in this country. We've been doing so in Kentucky since 1942. Our organization gets involved in many different things, a variety of issues such as this, but typically on legislation like House Bill 5 and the Safer Kentucky Act, we tend to work behind the scenes, consulting with legislators, sharing stories from our members to help them better craft legislation that's going to make not just our community safer, but to make our officers safer. However, I think it's time that the FOP took a stand and became more vocal, and that's why I'm here with you all today. The Safer Kentucky Act is vital to the health and welfare of our law enforcement officers and to the safety of the communities they serve. Before I go any further, I want to share a staggering number with you. Over 350 law enforcement officers last year were shot in the line of duty. Not killed, shot in the line of duty. This is the most violent year on record. Over 124 officers lost their lives last year. And although that number is down, it's still unacceptable. We heard one story here today, Caleb Conley's widow. I was there that night at the hospital with others as we arrived there to make sure that she had the help she needed. Members of the Sheriff's Department, the FOP, our Lexington FOP. I believe if House Bill 5 was in place, that gentleman that killed that deputy would not have been out on the street to do so. In addition to continuing increase of line of duty injuries and deaths, we have a recruitment and retention problem in this Commonwealth. And I ask you today, as you consider this bill and your support, would you want to do our job? Would you want your son or daughter to do our job? Not only does it feel like the communities you serve for some reason really don't support you, but at times our elected officials tend to forget exactly who it is that's out there making sure they and their families are safe. I'm in Frankfort with a lot of you, have relationships with everybody sitting up there. We all work well together. We appreciate your all support, whether we disagree on policy or not. But we're aware things take time and it takes a process. But on behalf of our members, I can tell you that your support and eventual passage of House Bill 5 says to law enforcement in our state that not only do you hear our concerns, but you hear them loud and clear, and that you're answering and meeting our needs, and you care about our safety and our family's safety. Trust me, there's much more to be done, and I'm sure you'll hear about other things that the FOP believes are important. But I want to highlight just a couple things, and I'll make it quickly, Mr. Chairman. One of the provisions that spoke loudly to our members was the fentanyl provision in the bill. Fentanyl in our communities is getting worse by the minute. Not only is it a danger to those who have become addicted or try it, but it's also dangerous to the law enforcement professionals and first responders that have to deal with those individuals and help them. So much so that if you're not aware, most departments carry go bags or Narcan on them to help not just resuscitate individuals they come into contact with, but resuscitate their partners they may be out there with. There have been many accidental overdoses, and luckily, instead of helping the community we're there, we're having to save our own person. For our correction officer members in the FOP, contraband being smuggled into facilities is a major issue. The increased penalties in House Bill 5 are vital to helping battle that. As a local FOP president in Louisville, I can tell you our corrections officers and their lodge deal with that on an everyday basis. It's getting better, but it's not the best it can be. And last, charitable bail funding is another problem the FOP believes needs to be addressed, and we're pleased to see that it is in House Bill 5. To quote our National Vice President, Joe Grimaldi, bail reform in this country has been an unmitigated disaster. I can tell you, in conclusion, our members, those of us who've worked in law enforcement for a long time, did not go into this line of work without having a heart for service and a heart for our communities. I know that House Bill 5 has a lot of penalty increases. It looks very doom and gloom, but I appreciate the compassion that was put into it. I appreciate the assistance that they're offering individuals in our communities. And law enforcement wants to be a partner in that, and the FOP will continue to do so. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time. The FOP urges you to vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
So we're going to go to questions at this point. Representative Ballman. Representative Blank, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question so much as comments on the bill. Thank you all, to all of you all, for bringing this piece of legislation. Like the president of the county attorney's office, may not be a perfect piece of legislation. There's not all things legislation this voluminous is am I going to agree on, but the most of it I do. Ms. Conley, thank you. Thank you. Sheriff, thank you for being here today, and your staff for continuing to support Ms. Conley. Please stay in touch and support her. Her husband made the ultimate sacrifice. To the Luxembourg family, this body, this House, passed a bill, had it went on through the General Assembly, that would have prevented the gentleman from being released. We've been working on this. We passed it out of the House once. Shame on the others for not passing it. I hear a lot of people grumbling and griping about things contained within this. For one time, let me ask you all to listen to the true experts on these topics, and that's boots on the ground of people that's dealing with this type of stuff every day. For years now, not only in this state but across this country, we've seen under the title of criminal justice reform becoming more and more lax on punishment and laws. And we're seeing the impact of it across this country right now. People are fleeing their states. They're fleeing the big cities because of these radical policies. We have tried to humanize people who are criminals and cause harm to our society. We try to create victims out of them rather than truly protecting the citizens of this Commonwealth. People like Jake Luxembourg, people like Caleb Conley, that are the true victims in this. All of a sudden, the mood in society, because of whatever reason, is that we should be sympathetic to those who are causing us harm. We, as a government, have a responsibility to protect the citizens of this Commonwealth. And that's what we're doing with House Bill 5. Quite frankly, I think you don't go far enough. I think that if someone traffics drugs of any sort and someone overdoses, dies, they ought to be charged with murder, period. It's murder, not just fentanyl, but any drug. I would be harder on the gun penalties. That's just me. But I'll take what I can get. So I thank you all for bringing this. And as someone who spent my career putting a uniform on every day, pinning a badge upon my chest and going out to work, thank you for once listening to us, the boots on the ground, of telling you what we need to do to make our society, our community safer, so we don't have to have the Luxembourgs, the Conleys, sitting before us telling us of the tragedies that they have encountered that were preventable, but because of our lack of ability to put good policy in place, we have failed them. And for that, I apologize to you all, but we are here today to make a difference. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Blanton. Representative Herron, you're recognized, and the lights are going out. I swear I didn't do that. So we're almost to 45 minutes. I may give some additional time here. Somebody's playing with the lights. Okay, so we may have some additional time. I know I had said at the outset that each side would get 45 minutes, but we need time to question and have our comments, so I think I'll give each side 60 minutes, and that's probably best here. So, Representative Herron, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, before I start, I want to thank the families who came today to share your story. I am sorry that those things happened to your family, and that those are experiences that you are going to have to live with for the rest of your life. And I think it's very important for victims to come and talk to us about the things that you experience. It's very difficult and hard. So I just want to thank you for being here. As a representative who represents the 42nd District here in this state, I get phone calls weekly, not just about crime, but victims of gun violence. Whether it's from a mother, a sister, a grandmother, or a house that's been shot up, and folks have asked, where can they go stay? I get these calls. I probably get them more than anybody in this room. Over the weekend, I got a call that a 4-year-old was shot and killed in my district. So when we talk about crime and what is happening in our state, I know because I worked with the families. I know because my families have been victims. I know because my families have been perpetrators. And as we talk about the things that we need to do around making our state safe, and I've been very open with the bill sponsors, unfortunately, I do not think that this bill is going to make us safer. And there's several reasons why I say that. But one of the biggest things is that no time in the state of Kentucky or in our nation have we been able to incarcerate ourselves out of any issue, ever. And I don't think that today or next month or this year is going to be the year that we do that. We're not the first who have had issues with crime, and we've never been able to incarcerate ourselves out of an issue, nor has creating penal codes been a deterrent to reduce crime. And so I think that for me, it's a very difficult situation because I said I get the calls daily. I go to the grocery store and they say, oh, you're the woman on TV. What do you do? This is what's happened to me. My son was murdered 7 years ago and we don't know who done it. I get the call, so I get it, I know and I understand. My concerns and questions with this piece of legislation, actually it's a lot, but what I will do for the purposes of time is, as you all were crafting this piece of legislation, what is the data and the statistics that you use to gather to say that these specific provisions are the provisions that are going to keep our state safe? And where is the evidence of that data?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that, Representative Herron. Both being representatives from Louisville, we definitely deeply understand the impact and the fear and terror that the crime in our city is having on all of our constituents. So I appreciate your question. The data is, or the research and the studies are here in front of me, and they do demonstrate that increasing incarceration of violent offenders will absolutely, unequivocally lead to safer communities and less crime. And so I have it all here in front of me. I could cite them all, but there's 116. I doubt the chairman wants me to do that right now, but I would happily share this with you after the committee.
Chair, absolutely. We asked for this during the December hearing. Actually, I believe Senator Westerfield did, and we haven't received it. So that's an issue. My last question, if you don't mind, Chairman,
yes, go ahead,
is how will the 3 strikes law and the persistent felony law work in conjunction with each other? And to me, they seem like that they're duplicate and it's excessive. So can you just explain how, with the 3 strikes and the persistent felony?
So let me note what it is and what it is not. This is a violent 3 strikes laws. I think it's too lax. I think it should be 2. I don't like in our bill that we have 3. I think it should be 2. If you violate someone's safety, a peaceable citizen, in a violent crime, and Representative Herron, our violent criminal statute, it's defined in Kentucky law, and it's mighty small. When we think of violence, we think of a lot of things that are not. It probably should be included in the violent crime statute, and so I think it should be 2 and not 3. But how it would work is if you get convicted of your 3rd violent offense, and that's a significant violence, then you're going to prison for the rest of your life. Data during December, I noted 4. I can give you 100 people who've committed their 4th violent offense. It would have stopped that. Had we passed Representative Blanton's bill, you want a piece of, another piece of data? Jake Luxemburger would be alive today.
I'm looking more for not 1 or 2, but like what is the overall data is what I'm asking.
Let me finish the answer.
Like I don't want to be tit for tat, but when we talk about data, I've got examples of people, and I'm not talking about 1. I'm talking about what is the whole data of what happened in the last 5 years, the last 3 years, or the last year.
I don't think Jake Luxemburger's tit for tat. I think that's a young man who would be living today had we done our job. That's not tit for tat. That's 1. It's an anecdote, but that's data. That's an important point to be made here. We also note, and we've said a number of times, we've heard it a little bit, that we can't incarcerate ourselves out of this problem. That's not what Kentucky's tried to do. That is an unfair attack. As the governor said in his State of the Commonwealth, Kentucky has more recovery and treatment beds per capita than any state in the Commonwealth. That is what we are about. Recovery, helping folks who need to be recovered, loving on our people. But we're also about people who commit violence on our people and putting them away for a long time. That's what this bill is supposed to do. So if you want to talk about 1 provision, bring that provision up. We've talked about the 3 violent strikes and you're out. I think it should be 2. But we can talk about any one of these provisions that you want to. But this bill, when I hear we can't incarcerate ourselves out, I want to correct the record there. Not what we're trying to do. Another thing that we've got in this bill is we are going to study for the first time these prison programs to make sure that they are effective for 2 reasons. 1, when our family members and our neighbors who've committed crimes are in prison, when they get out, we don't want them to commit crimes and hurt other people. But we also want to equip that individual wrongdoer with the opportunity to succeed in life. This is a bill with heart all over it. Primarily victim, you better believe that. But also the offender when they come out to try to help them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Kulkarni, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I would like to thank and offer my gratitude to the families that have presented for their bravery today and offer my deepest condolences for their tragic loss. I know there's been a lot of discussion about data, and during the interim I was able to attend a conference, a full, nationwide conference with different legislatures, different Department of Corrections, all with information about criminal justice reform initiatives that have worked and that have not worked. And some of Kentucky's bills from the past that reformed our juvenile justice system, that reformed our criminal justice system, and I believe Senator Westerfield was instrumental in some of those, were held up as examples. And they gave us, and I shared this with you, Representative Baumann, a snapshot of where Kentucky is. So I want to offer these points of data as a context of where we are in Kentucky. We have nationwide, there's 4 times more people that have died from drug overdoses and twice as many from suicide as compared to homicide. This is from 2022. In Kentucky, it's 7 times more that were victims that died from drug overdoses and suicide than were victims of homicide. We have the second lowest property crime rate in the region and the 10th lowest property crime rate in the country. We have the lowest violent crime rate in our region and the 7th lowest violent crime rate in the country. Between 2012 and 2022, over the last decade, property crime has decreased by 44% and robbery by 53%. I just want to put those numbers out there because I have a couple of different issues with this particular bill, I think that overall it does not address the crimes and the criminals that we are seeking to prevent from committing other crimes. And I think a little bit taken aback by the provision, especially in Section 29, I believe it is, in the committee sub, that basically provides no criminal or civil liability for individuals that are defending their property or their retail establishment. There is no definition of reasonable force in this legislation, and I want to understand from the sponsors, how are you going to prevent the entirely foreseeable unintended consequences where you will have somebody that is shot? Because, by the way, this gun doesn't do anything to address gun violence. It doesn't do anything to keep guns out of the hands of the people that shouldn't have them. So my question to you is, it is also a permitless concealed carry state. We do not do background checks. What is your reasoning, and how do you anticipate preventing a shop owner who suspects somebody of stealing a bag of chips from shooting them and having zero criminal or civil liability for having done so?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Representative Kulkarni. That would be up to, if that case did go to trial, that would be up to the jury to decide whether or not that was reasonable force. Thank you.
And by the way, reasonable, that concept is all over the law, and we know that. We're lawyers, Representative Kulkarni. That's a prosecutorial discretion question, a grand jury question, and a petit jury question. And then your hypothetical, that's not going to happen. If it is, the person that shoots them for stealing a bag of chips is going to go to prison for the rest of their life. You know that, and I know that. I would also note that this has nothing to do with guns. Again, that is emphatically wrong. Two provisions that this bill has in it about guns is, number one, when we talk to LMPD and our FOP friends, they say the spike in violence. By the way, according to the Council of State Governments, Kentucky's one of only 3 states with an increase in violent crime over the last year. Kentucky's one of only 3. Council of State Governments, I will provide that information to you.
A fractional increase.
What's that?
A fractional
One of only
increase.
3 that have had an increase, and a fraction is an individual who got harmed and ought not have been. 2 provisions in this bill that talk about gun violence to try to remove it. One is, we know when we talk to LMPD that the spike in the Louisville violent crime has to do with minors. One of the things that we've have in this bill is we're cracking down on adults who use minors for their crimes. That's what that's what LMPD has said. That will be very helpful. So if an adult, because he knows he's going to be handled appropriately, he doesn't want to, and he knows that if he can get a juvenile, the worst that can happen to juveniles is to get a couple of years of treatment in the system. So they use minors. LMPD's told us all this. So that's one provision. The other provision is, if you use a handgun in the commission of a crime that you illegally possess, then we what's that? Any firearm, excuse me, not just a handgun. Then we ratchet up the offense. So it's not true to say that we're not addressing handguns. What we want to do with handguns is we want to say that people who have them lawfully should continue to be able to have them. But if you use them unlawfully, we want to put a hurting on you.
A quick follow-up.
Yeah, briefly.
I also wanted to very quickly ask, I know I've spoken to the sponsor about whether or not he has spoken to any judges about these provisions, because what we are doing essentially is looking at a level of mass incarceration that we haven't seen in decades. So how are you've said you've talked to jailers, you've talked to prosecutors, you've talked to judges. I notably do not see any of them from Jefferson County. So my question is, which judges did you speak with? Because every single one that I have spoken with has raised significant concerns about the taking away almost entirely of judicial discretion from judges to be able to ascertain things and look at the entire framework. We had a meeting earlier in this interim with judges talking about how important it is that they look at all the factors when they set bail. Charitable bail organizations do not do that, as an aside. So what judges did you speak with?
We talked to Justice Bizik about provisions of this bill. We talked to Court of Appeals Judge Eckerly about provisions of this bill. We talked to Court of Appeals Judge Karam about provisions of this bill. We talked about almost the whole bill. I think the whole bill with Stephanie Burt, district judge, all from Jefferson County. Talked to judges all, across the Commonwealth, but you mentioned Jefferson, and those are the 3 highest elected judges in Jefferson, and I think the legislative liaison for the district judges. So we've talked to them as well.
Okay, well, some of those have raised, maybe not the ones you've named, and I don't want to name any names, but they have raised significant concerns about that because we're talking about, and I understand you talked to some appellate court judges, but these are the people that are going to be looking at this and most on the front lines are district court judges and circuit court judges before it ever gets to the Court of Appeals. So I just wanted to understand, because I have a huge list of concerns that was sent to me by judges. I have a huge list of concerns that have been sent to me by different advocacy organizations, different emails, mental health advocacy organizations, because, and I will end with a comment, Mr. Chair, I promise. I appreciate the intent, and I, again, appreciate the bravery of the families that have suffered these tragic losses, but what this bill will do is criminalize our homeless people, criminalize our mentally ill people, criminalize our addicted people who are suffering from substance use disorder, and it will criminalize the poorest among us. It is not going to deter criminals who are going to do those crimes because we are not addressing any of these underlying reasons for those crimes in this bill. We have no fiscal impact. It's indeterminate according to a document we just received before the committee. And so we have no idea how much it's going to cost local jails. We have no idea how much it's going to cost our prisons. And frankly, we don't know the impact on our corrections officers. I would be curious to hear how safe they would feel in prisons where people have no incentive for good behavior because they're in there for life without the possibility of any rehabilitation or redemption. This is not a bill that addresses any of the issues that we want in terms of addressing public safety. It will not make our community safer, but it will criminalize the most vulnerable and marginalized among us. And I encourage my colleagues to take a look at all of the unintended consequences that are glaringly obvious in this legislation before they take a vote to pass it out of this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have time to respond if you'd like.
No, thank you.
Okay. Representative Doan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the families for coming here today and for testifying on this. I understand to some extent my story's not the same as yours, but where you come from, and my critiques and comments on this bill aren't directed on anything that would have impacted you all. I've had a chance to sit with my prosecutors, sit with my judges, and talk about this bill. And there are some unintended consequences I hope that we can work on in this bill in the future. One of the specific portions of this bill is we increase the penalties around fleeing and evading. When you look at 18-year-old kids who get pulled over by a cop, there's going to be some fleeing and evading. And a cop's going to sprain his ankle. I've represented police officers on cases like that, and I've represented law enforcement before. And we're taking judicial discretion away from judges who can say whether or not those kids get probation and parole on those. So we're already seeing a statewide jail funding crisis. And I think that we need to work a little bit more around the edges on those issues to make sure that there aren't those unintended consequences that are going to continue on a poor jail funding situation that we already have. I also practice in the area of EPOs and DVOs. I do a lot of domestic work. This bill will essentially allow prosecutors to charge individuals with felonies for sending text messages. Whenever someone's charged with an EPO or DVO, a no-contact order goes in place. And that no-contact order says no contact. What you'll have is people gaming the system. You'll have somebody that just wants to get the other in trouble send repeated text messages over and over, pictures of their children, saying, Johnny misses you. He wants you to come home. He wants you to come home. Just say hi. Just tell Johnny you love him. And people will do that. And that's already a crime. That's already a misdemeanor. But that second offense within 5 years, we're going to make those felonies. I don't know that our prosecutors are going to charge that, but it is one of the unintended consequences that I hope we can address. Now, if they're violent offenses, lock them up. I'm good with that. But we do need to address some of those things around the edges. There are, and I know you're aware of this, Jason, there the issues around civil immunity in this, likely unconstitutional. I think you're going to correct those as we go forward, and I applaud you for that. We address homelessness in this bill. I've served on the board for a homeless shelter, Northern Kentucky's only low-barrier shelter, for the last 4 years. It's tough work, but it's good work. And one of the things that speaks volume in this bill is that we're going to create zones for people to go, or to allow cities to create kind of publicly sanctioned homeless encampments. In this state, we require by law that every county has a homeless shelter. but we do not require that every county in this state has an animal shelter, but we do not require the same for homeless shelters. Not every county in this state has a place for someone that's experiencing homelessness to go. And so while we do create zones in this, a local jurisdiction may create a zone. I'd like to see us go a little bit further in that. I'd like to see that every county is required to address this issue, so that if we're going to criminalize on-street camping, we're going to put these people in jail, let's at least make sure that government is providing a place for people to go. We do it for animals. Let's do it for humans too. Thank you all for your work, and I know that you folks out in Louisville are working hard to represent your people, and I know that the people here with us today understand that. Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond just briefly?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Representative Doan, for your feedback. I will commit to making the change on the EPO language to satisfy the issue with the texting. Thank you for that feedback.
Representative Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and question. First, thank you to Representative Baumann and the folks at the table and many members of the Louisville delegation that have worked very hard on this. I know they've put a lot of effort into this. There's a lot of good in this bill that I support. One issue that was brought to my attention from some folks with my school board, law enforcement, it was originally found on page 42 of the original bill and page 40 of this, and I would like to talk to you all more about potentially filing a floor amendment because I think it improves the bill. There's some language about who a school employee shall report to. And I really believe the intent is to not just have those reporters to only contact the school board law enforcement, but to also contact other law enforcement. And I understand that and support that, but I think it could probably be worded better. And I just wanted to go on the record and address these concerns. I believe it improves the bill, and we'll be sure that multiple agencies would receive reports when necessary. But as I said, I just wanted to put that on the record. I want to commend Representative Baumann. I know how hard he's worked on this. I've talked to him several times about this, and just think we can improve this slightly and look forward to supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And yeah, we will work with you on that change. Thank you.
And I agree with you, and I've committed to doing that as well. And Representative Baumann has had to put up with me all interim and all sessions, so he's a good man for doing that. Representative Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions. And I first also want to thank the families for your courage. It is not hard to come talk about the loss of a child or a spouse. So my prayers will be with you tonight and in the coming weeks as we go forward, because I know that this is an ever-present feeling for you. And so I want to honor that before I start. As a legislative body, we have a duty to make good law, and we have failed already today because we've adopted a committee sub that isn't public. It is, as far as I know, it's still not on the website. And so could you please start by enumerating the differences between House Bill 5 and the committee sub so that at least everyone in the room knows what's different?
Absolutely. So to start, we removed the parole board provisions completely. In sections 17 through 21, we cover the street camping provisions. Here you will find that we have removed the language that would implicate federal funding for those housing initiatives. In section 22, for involuntary commitment, instead of striking through 1C, we have changed the and in C to an or. So there are 4 elements really within 202C that are required for involuntary commitment that are conjoined with an and we're changing that to an or. Sections 25 through 27 that deal with murder and the attempted murder of a first responder. We have removed the language designating attempted murder for a first responder as a capital offense. This act of attempted murder of a first responder was not going to be death penalty eligible, but we wanted to remove any confusion, so we made that change to remove the language. It's sections 33 and 34. We have adjusted the language to give schools more flexibility in reporting to law enforcement. It sounds like we still need to continue working on that. Sections 46 to 48 cover fleeing and evading, and so we have removed the enhancer for foot pursuits so long as no one is killed or injured for foot pursuits. And then lastly, we have added Section 50, which deals with the aggregation of theft across jurisdictions.
I'm impressed with how well you were able to summarize that, given that that was almost a dozen changes less than 24 hours before this hearing. It almost seems to me that there was more spent time capitalizing on human tragedy and preparing people to come bare their souls to us than there has been on preparing the legislation for today, calling this special meeting. So I'd like to know, speaking of human tragedy, when we think about the change to Section 22, you've got 4 elements for an involuntary commitment. Why are we changing it to an or? Why do more people need to go to mental institutions?
Section 22.
So you said one of the changes made in the sub is that we are going from A, B, C, and D, and now it'll be A, B, C, or D. And what I'm hearing is that that makes it a lot easier to involuntarily confine somebody who's mentally ill.
Yeah, that change was made at the request of someone in the mental health industry. We're putting that back. I've talked to a number of them today. But I have to say something, Mr. Chairman, because there were some attacks there that I think were wildly unfounded. The rule is that the bill be sent to committee members the day before. It was. I've heard from several of our members of this committee, no Democrats, but several members of this committee today asking about what the changes were. We've been talking about this bill since June. We had an interim committee hearing on this thing in December. We've talked to a number of you guys in the hallway. We're always open. You know that. You could have come today and talk about this. So you say we failed. There was no failure here. The rules have been followed. It was sent out yesterday. You could have come and talked to us. You didn't. And so any member could have. Several did. So I just want to push back on the unfounded attacks there. This has been a very transparent process and will continue to be. We're not voting on this until next week at the earliest on the floor. And so it's been a very transparent process, and one that I'm very proud of. We've talked to hundreds of Kentuckians, every Democrat. We've made a number of changes that you guys suggested in December. So this is not the process to lodge that attack against.
Well, I will have to...
Hold on just a moment. This, just to correct the record, this substitute was sent out to members of the committee yesterday at 5 o'clock. So members have had the substitute. This was heard in the interim. So there's nothing new in anything that's being presented today. So you can continue, Representative Burke.
I'm sorry. You said there's nothing new, even though the changes were made and released at 5:02 p.m.?
Do you have a question or comment you can direct to the
Well, I'm
panel?
asking you to clarify because I believe you just misstated the facts.
Well, I'm sure you probably do, but if you have a question or comment,
Thank you. I'll continue.
You may do that.
Is there any evidence that suggests that jailing unhoused people will improve public safety or the availability of affordable housing?
I'd say first off, the goal here is not to jail unhoused people. Somewhere between 70 and 90% of the people that are in the current unsheltered homeless population have serious mental illness or drug addiction. Everyone's goal here is to get those people help, to get them into rehab. Studies show that some 75% of them will turn down the opportunity to get a free rehab bed. I've been to many rehab centers. They said they've got beds that go empty every night. So every judge that, first off, the police force is not anxious to go pass out tickets or arrests regarding this provision. But if you get an individual that refuses to move along out of a forbidden camping location, and they do get charged, the judge can divert them into rehab. And we know that for a fact that we have dozens or more funded rehab beds available every night. A lot of those with Medicaid funding. So that's the goal, is to get the people into rehab. There's no compassion in leaving them on the street to wallow in their mental illness and their drug addiction, where they go down a slow spiral to a premature death. Some studies show up to 30 years younger than most people die. So everybody's goal is to get these people into rehab, get them the help they need, and let them become productive members of society. Studies by the San Diego Police Force show that among the unsheltered homeless population, they are 500 times more likely to commit crimes than members of the ordinary population. If you can get them into a sheltered situation, they're only 50 times more likely. So this is a population, while it's not homogeneous, has significant risk factors for criminal activity in society, and we are adamantly committed to getting them the help they need, which absolutely starts with rehab.
Thank you. I would say that there's absolutely a very clear and apparent difference between unhoused people in San Diego, California, and unhoused people in Kentucky. As somebody who has served the unhoused population as a social worker and then an attorney, I know that in Lexington, the reason a lot of people are unhoused and sleeping out as opposed to sleeping in one of our wonderful shelters is we don't have a couples shelter. So if a husband and wife are evicted and they have nowhere to go, there's not a shelter where they can stay together. They can send the wife to the women's shelter and the husband to the men's shelter, but then what do they do with their dog or their cat? We're solving a problem that exists, and I don't dispute that there's a housing crisis and there are people on the streets who don't need to be, but I don't think that putting them in jail is the solution. I think we need to find better solutions. My last question. I would like to,
please be brief with it,
yes,
please.
I'd like to know from one of your presenters, the Commonwealth attorney who said she generally supports the bill. Would you care to provide any additional feedback on how this bill could be improved?
I'm sorry, who are you directing the question to?
Your presenter, who is the Commonwealth attorney, who said, quote, "I generally support the bill."
Okay, that would be Courtney Baxter. Mr. Chairman, is it okay if she comes back to the table?
If she wants to, she can come back. She may not be prepared to answer that type of a question, but
I would say I'm not in a position to address the specifics. We have been working with them as we talk about the drafting of the language and giving our suggestions about what we think would be good tweaks to it.
Okay.
Then we're going to continue to be a part of that process.
Okay. I just wanted to get some clarity if you could provide it, because you did not express unequivocal support or complete and total support. You said you generally support the bill.
We think a lot of the provisions of the bill are excellent, especially as it deals with repeat offenders. Mm-hmm. People that are committing multiple crimes I see in my jurisdiction. I can tell you that we've had an explosion of fleeing, evading in vehicles that are causing injuries, and obviously the Luxembourger family is in my jurisdiction. They lost their 10-year-old son. Over the years, I've been a prosecutor for 19 years, I've seen an increase in the types of crime that's violent. We have a revolving door of criminals in our jurisdiction. We are, as Jenny Oldham said, as prosecutors, we do believe in rehabilitation. In my jurisdiction, we offer diversion programs. We have a multitude of programs that we deal with that help people with substance abuse problems. But that's not what we're here talking about today. We're talking about those offenders who are engaging in multiple crime. They are endangering our citizens. They're killing people, and they need to be held accountable. So I know your question was about how can we tweak the bill. We're working on that. So, and they have been from the outset, which we appreciate wholeheartedly, reaching out to us from the beginning to be a part of this process, because they know we're the ones that are enforcing the laws. So,
thank you for your feedback.
You're welcome.
Would you like to introduce the other members of your team that have worked on the bill? I don't think you've done that.
Yes,
so
sir.
I'll let you
I
do
did that
and
at
then
the
I'm gonna
outset,
take
but I'd love to do it
opposition
again.
Testimony. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, on the team here is Whip Jason Nemus, Chairman Kevin Bratcher, Chairman Ken Fleming, Representative John Hodgson, Representative Emily Calloway, and Representative Susan Witten. Thank you. Oh, and I would like to recognize one other. Shannon Stiglitz is here to testify regarding the retail crime that we're experiencing across the state, but due to the time constraints, wasn't able to come to the table. So I just wanted to acknowledge her and thank her for being here as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will now take up those who are opposed to House Bill 5, the first organization. So let's try to keep it to an hour, if possible. Sarah Duran for Kentucky Free is the first organization that's signed up, and any members of your organization can come forward. please introduce yourselves and you may proceed.
I'm Sarah Duran with Kentucky Free, the Kentucky Forum for Rights, Economics, and Education.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew McNeil, the president of Kentucky Free.
Assume you have prepared remarks, so you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our organization appreciates the effort of the sponsors to address violent crime in our state, and we commend you on your commitment to protecting Kentucky citizens. We're not here to be against this entire bill. There are some good things in this bill. We just want to share some of the concerns we have, and we appreciate the opportunity to engage productively on this legislation. One of the main concerns we have right now is the fiscal impact. We are a center-right, fiscally conservative organization. I have not had a chance to fully review the fiscal impact because it only came out this afternoon. But it does say that the impact is significant on both the state level and the local level. Too significant to put a number on it. The statement also says that with longer incarceration times, the challenge of reentry back in the community will become more difficult. And I don't believe that that is the intent of the bill sponsors, but that appears to be an unintended consequence. We do have some recommendations to improve the bill. First, we understand that fentanyl is a problem that we can't ignore. It's touched many people in this room. However, increasing the penalties for a person who knowingly sells or distributes fentanyl ignores a unique problem in that it's often unclear which drugs are cut with fentanyl. Users and distributors often don't know, which is why overdose deaths are so high. It also hurts Kentucky's effort to save lives through the Good Samaritan Act that promises protection to individuals who provide emergency assistance to those in an overdose situation. So we worry that this could unduly lead to more overdose deaths. We recommend striking this and stepping up law enforcement efforts to stop fentanyl trafficking and focusing efforts on harm reduction access, as was done with decriminalizing the fentanyl detection strips. Second, we recommend changes to the repeat violent offender enhancements. Removing the option for parole only guarantees an increase in corrections costs. It does not guarantee an improvement in public safety. According to a recent study by the National Institute of Justice, they found that long sentences do little to deter individuals from committing crime. Instead, those serving time without the possibility of parole often present greater risk to the corrections staff, as they have no incentive to rehabilitate themselves. Men and women working in corrections have an incredibly hard job. We shouldn't add more potential for harm in their workplace. Lastly, we are concerned about the shopkeeper's privilege. Kentucky law already provides the ability for shopkeepers to detain someone they believe is stolen merchandise. Adding language that allows for the use of reasonable force increases the potential for violent offenders with someone suspected of shoplifting. The bill does not define reasonable force, so it's likely to be interpreted differently depending on the individual. This will lead to greater encounters that put business owners, their employees, and the public at a greater risk of harm. We appreciate many efforts made in this bill, such as providing IDs for those re-entering society from our prisons, as well as efforts made by this body to increase prevention, treatment, and resources. Although we have concerns about important parts of this bill, we appreciate the sponsors' openness to our comments and your desire to make Kentucky's communities safer, and we hope to continue to work with the sponsors to make sure this bill does that.
Thank you very much. Jason Hall with the Catholic Conference. Please come up here, forward if you're here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jason Hall with the Catholic Conference of Kentucky. I also appreciate the intent behind the bill. I certainly appreciate efforts to keep Kentuckians safe. I appreciate the willingness to work on the bill and continue to improve it through the process. I want to just highlight three particular provisions that are of particular concern to us. First of all, the homelessness provisions. I understand the what was said earlier about the intent behind it, but I think encountering the or using the law enforcement and criminal justice system as the primary frontline means to address homelessness is extremely counterproductive. As was mentioned earlier, we do not even have shelters in every county. We have a homeless affordable housing crisis in this country, including in Kentucky. And so there's a real problem simply with stock and availability of existing housing. And until we address that, other approaches are going to fall short. Also, secondly, I don't know that this has been addressed during this hearing yet, but the differentiation of penalties for those with who have the resources to pay restitution for criminal mischief versus those who do not. That's extremely problematic to us, that those with greater financial resources will actually have a criminal penalty, not civil liability, but a criminal penalty lower than those without financial means. That it strikes me as a particularly egregious mistake to make. And then finally, I would just add my voice to the concern about the fentanyl provisions. Representative Blanton, I appreciate your comments earlier, but our concern is that the incentives we're creating are that when someone is overdosing, 911 is not going to be called. We have been long-time supporters of the Good Samaritan law, of making Narcan available, of all of these efforts to try to save lives of Kentuckians who are trapped in addiction. And if there's if you're sharing drugs and you're going to be charged with manslaughter 1, if the person you are not going to call 911, and that's just I think that the incentive we're creating. So those are our main concerns. We have some other concerns about the overall approach, but those are the big things. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. ACLU of Kentucky can come forward. Kunju, and I'm sorry I can't. I have met with you before. I'm sorry I can't pronounce your last name, and I won't attempt to. But you and
I am used to it after 46
other,
years on this planet. But thank you.
Welcome, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Elliott, and members of the House Judiciary Committee for allowing me to testify this afternoon. My name is Kungo Jaguna, and I am a policy strategist with the ACLU of Kentucky. First, I want to thank the primary sponsor, Rep Baumann, for his willingness to meet with me and discuss provisions of this bill after it was filed. Him and I and the primary sponsors of this bill agree that we share a common goal: a safe, healthy, vibrant, and prosperous Commonwealth. We just strongly disagree on how we get there. Anyone who is serious about the work we do in this building wants a safe Kentucky. We all do. But we know that crimes and enhanced penalties don't work. And how do we know that? And with no disrespect to Representative Nemes, I think he's wrong when he says that we haven't passed a lot of bills. My friends at KY Policy have shown through their research that this body over the past decade has passed more and more crimes that enhance penalties and lengthen prison sentences. So much so that Kentucky incarceration rates are some of the highest in this nation and in the world, which means if locking people up made us safe, we're one of the safest places on the planet. But yet here we sit with a bill entitled the Safer Kentucky Act, looking to lock up more people for longer, with little to no support for provisions, maybe one or two, that uplift and empower people, like funding for affordable housing, substance use treatment, mental health, victim services. Instead, this imperfect bill takes a misguided attempt to address the fentanyl and overdose crisis by targeting individuals who sell or distribute even the smallest amounts of fentanyl. You can be charged with murder. It's a capital offense. Interesting enough, the first time I ever testified was before this committee, 2 years ago. The bill was a bill that enhanced charges for trafficking and fentanyl. And here we are again, 2 years later. And what I said then is still relevant today. So I'm going to repeat some of it. We are in the age of synthetic opioids. Yesterday it was heroin. Today it's fentanyl. Tomorrow it's an unknown synthetic. Our myopic focus on fentanyl misses the proverbial forest for the trees. Our nemesis is substance use disorder. I also told this committee that if the bill captured my conduct when I was in active addiction It misses its intended target because I wasn't a drug dealer or a trafficker. Arresting me as a low-level user wouldn't reduce crime, decrease the availability of fentanyl, nor reduce overdose deaths. And to support what you've already heard, while we have a Good Samaritan law which encourages people to call for overdose, it don't protect you against homicide charges. And here's what I'll tell you. I'm not proud of it, but in active addiction, I'd have stuck you with Narcan, put you in the recovery position as you're taught, and I would have dipped. That's just being honest. More people will die. I'm not naive. This bill has 52 sponsors, 10 of which sit on this very committee. So the doubt of this bill today isn't in really any dispute. But my challenge to each and every one of you here today is that if you hear something that causes you concern or pause, vote no, even if your name is on the bill. Let's work out the imperfections that we've heard about and the concerns that you've heard about. Join me and all of us in engaging in real, tough, frustrating, and the imperfect work of creating that strong, vibrant, prosperous Kentucky that we all want. Thank you, Chairman Elliott, for allowing me to testify, and members of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you very much. Carrie Cole with the Bail Project, if you'd come forward. Thank you.
Sorry, is it not hot
No.
here? Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Chair Elliott, Vice Chair Decker, and other distinguished members of the committee. My name is Carrie Cole, and I'm the Kentucky Policy Advocacy and Partnerships Manager for the Bail Project, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to restoring the presumption of innocence through improvements to the pretrial system. I grew up in Kentucky, and I live here. This is my home. While the Bail Project operates nationally, we put our roots down in the communities that we serve. We operated a charitable bail organization in Louisville from 2018 to 2023, providing free bail assistance to over 4,200 Kentuckians in 28 counties statewide. Our clients in Louisville have safely returned to 91% of their court dates. In addition to posting bails, we have provided needs-based supportive services to our clients upon release, including court reminders, travel assistance, and connections to social services like mental health and employment referrals. We are invested in making sure that Kentucky is a safe place where all of its residents can thrive. This is why we come today in staunch opposition to House Bill 5. This legislation includes severe restrictions on organizations that provide financial assistance to many Kentuckians who are in jail simply because they cannot afford to post bail, more than half of the Commonwealth's jail population. The provisions outlined in this bill will not protect public safety, but instead work against it. House Bill 5 would restrict bail payments by charitable bail organizations to less than $5,000. In doing so, it would limit the number of Kentuckians living in poverty who would be able to access financial support through their release. To access financial support to secure their release. In effect, this legislation would further entrench the two-tiered, wealth-based nature of the cash bail system in Kentucky, where people with money can pay to secure their freedom, regardless of the underlying safety concerns. But people living in poverty languish in jail, denied access to financial assistance. Setting an arbitrary hard cap will have inconsistent impact as bail amounts vary widely from county to county and fluctuate over time. Additionally, House Bill 5 would prohibit charitable bail organizations from posting for a variety of alleged offenses. This subverts the presumption of innocence, a fundamental right for all Americans, regardless of the charge. Regardless of the charge. This legislation is imprecise, disruptive of the judicial system, and will negatively impact safety in Kentucky. Under House Bill 5, the definition of charitable bail organizations is abnormally broad, applying onerous restrictions even to churches who occasionally post bail for their constituents, or even a mom and pop shop that's putting up a GoFundMe to support their son. And organizations would be required to make decisions and report cases using information that is not publicly available. Evidence, not the size of a person's bank account, should inform pretrial decision making. It would also mean that for many charges where a judge has determined a person can be safely released, an individual's freedom is ultimately dependent on their family's wealth and not a particular circumstance of their case. We are all aware of the increased urgency that both city and state governments are facing to address public safety. We feel that urgency too. But sensible legislating does not happen through a rushed process driven by fear. We can achieve better public safety outcomes through careful consideration of the legal system, with input from all affected stakeholders. House Bill 5 fails to do so. Charitable bail organizations provide an essential service that Kentuckians cannot afford to lose with the current bail system. Charitable bail organizations are designed to protect public safety of the communities in which we operate, not to undermine it. We ask the Kentucky legislator to partner with us and other impacted stakeholders to meaningfully improve the pretrial outcomes. Let's legislate based on evidence and not on fear. Thank you.
Thank you. George Eklund, Coalition for the Homeless.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and you may proceed.
Yeah, so my name is George Eklund. I work for the Coalition for the Homeless in Louisville, Kentucky. So we are a 40-member agency. We have 40 member agencies, and we really work to coordinate the response around homelessness, but we also advocate for the changes that we need. So me personally, I believe that housing is fundamental. Like, it is a need that everybody has. It is where we're all going to go home tonight, and we're going to recharge, and you all get to come back here, and I get to come home, stay home tomorrow. Our litmus test when we look at policies is this going to get somebody back into housing? Is it going to remove barriers? Is it going to get more affordable housing on the market? Is it going to make somebody's journey back into housing and productivity easier? House Bill 5 does not help people get off the streets and into housing. And homelessness is, in fact, a housing problem. We have seen a 58% in fair market rent since 2018. In the same time, we have seen a 73% increase in our homeless numbers. At least 4,700 Kentuckians are homeless on any given night. In Louisville's context, we have 1,600 people that are homeless on a given night. Our shelter capacity in Louisville is 750 beds. So we can do the math. People are by default going to be sleeping out on the streets, in their cars, wherever they can find a safe place that they can survive. There are entire swaths of our counties that have no shelter system at all. Each week, families call us to report that they're sleeping in cars or in camps, including 11 families in the days before Christmas. The worst part of my job is when a friend calls me to say, hey, I found a homeless family. Where can I send them? And I have to break it to them. Nowhere. We are full. We have a waiting list out the door. We do have a homeless problem, but it is largely driven by our communities not being able to build enough affordable rental housing. Low-income Kentuckians earning the least are playing a game of musical chairs where those with health issues, disabilities on a fixed income cannot compete on the open housing market and are left standing when the music stops. House Bill 5 will hamper our abilities to get people into housing specifically in the following ways. So 1, additional charges for street camping are redundant and counterproductive. Charges should be related to criminal activity, not your housing status, especially when we lack adequate housing and shelter for tens of thousands of Kentuckians. There are also already laws on the books to address crimes listed in the proposal. Before we add new charges to our statutes, let's take a look and examine the existing laws and really get to the bottom of why are we not utilizing things like loitering, things like blocking public passages, things like menacing and harassment. These are behaviors that we associate with street homelessness. We have laws in the books, we don't need additional ones. Adding vehicles to the definition of illegal camping will create more harm and trauma. Cars are often that last family's asset that they can use to maintain employment, to stay safe, to stay dry, to stay warm, and hopefully get out of homelessness faster. Each week, the Coalition of the Homeless, including the week of Christmas, will receive calls from families who report sleeping in their cars with young children. This traumatic experience should not be compounded by making it a crime and a misdemeanor. Lowering the threshold for criminal mischief for tenants is cruel and unnecessary. Charging a family with a misdemeanor if they cause even $1 of damage is unreasonable. Landlords are able to require a security deposit for any damages that they may incur. Our member agencies sometimes pay in upwards to $2,500, $3,000 for one apartment to secure any kind of damage that might happen while a tenant is living there. You know, this is a financial matter, not a criminal one, and it has nothing to do with public safety. We have met with the sponsors and have shared these concerns, and will continue to provide feedback to them and welcome meeting between legislators and our hardworking member agencies that we work with, as well as experts with lived experience. While we are relieved to hear that the bill has been amended to protect that critical federal funding stream and for supportive housing across the state, House Bill 5 still moves us away from solutions to homelessness and towards towards criminalization. I ask you to vote no on House Bill 5.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. Looks like we have two folks from Vocal, Kentucky. Stephanie Johnson, Shamika Parrish Wright, so if you would come up together. And thank you.
Good afternoon, and
thank you. Please continue.
I thank you, Chairman. My name is Shamika Parrish Wright. I thank you all for taking the time to hear us out. I appreciate the family also sharing their stories. I wrote something, but my phone died while waiting here. I just want to give the mic to Stephanie, but we also brought members and leaders in the back of us who are in the back of the building who are experiencing homelessness, who didn't hear their voices represented, and who also know that not everyone that is unhoused is dealing with substance use issues or mental health issues. Many of them just don't have enough money. And me, as a person now, I am a newly elected councilwoman for Louisville Metro Council District 3, but I am the director.
I'm sorry I didn't recognize you as such, so.
That's okay.
Welcome to Frankfort.
I'm here as director of Vocal Kentucky because our members and leaders would be impacted by this legislation. I also left my job at the Bail Project, and I helped start the Bail Project and made sure that work went across the state in the 28 counties. What we don't hear about is what works, and this does not work. What we need is 52 co-sponsors to make sure Martin County has better water, 52 co-sponsors to make sure there are climate change actions for the people who are one weather tragedy away from being homeless themselves. What we need is real actions that help improve conditions. And just because we are advocates and activists and organizers and organizations and agencies that are fighting for the humanity in people does not mean we are against law enforcement. We are against accountability. We know that jail is hell, and we know that it should only be used for the worst of the worst. The fact is, Kentucky is poor, and Kentucky is criminalizing poverty. And we will not get better that way. There is plenty of data out there, but beyond what Representative Kulkarni has shared, as well as Representative Herron has shared, that tells us that at the rate we are incarcerating people, all of us will be incarcerated within 100 years. This bill accelerates that fact. It accelerates that at the rate that we're going. We're not going to solve our issues by locking people up and continuing to criminalize poverty. I believe that the people who brought this together are amazing people who want to do the right thing, but many of them are ex-law enforcement, they're attorneys, and they are also running for office. Legislation should not be on the backs of poor people or because people have a personal vendetta. You have one of your own who allegedly caused harm to his wife, had a $25,000 bail, and was out within an hour. This does not stop rich people from committing crimes against poor people. This attacks poor people. I'm asking you to vote no because we are not ready for House Bill 5, and House Bill 5 is not ready for Kentucky. Do what's right. The people who are complaining about this believe in humanity, believe in responsibility, believe in restorative justice. This does not address the real issues Kentuckians are suffering from. And as someone who slept on Selby and Market in my car when Wayside did not have enough room for me and my 4 children, I understand what that feels like to be out and not have a place to go. There's more people who are suffering in silence, and we cannot have violent decision making that this Safer Kentucky Act is doing. This is real violence to your state and to your constituents that you'll never see here. The scariest moment I've had was when I was here and I brought people who had never been here, and there were people in clown suits with assault rifles walking right through here. That when the safest I've been unsafe in Justice Square, Jefferson Square Park, while we were standing out there and the buildings were protected, but racist people were allowed to shoot at us. Their guns were taken. We never seen them held accountable. I think we need to right some wrongs, but Safer Kentucky Act is not the way to do that. I want to pass the mic to Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and you're recognized, Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm on.
You're on. Thank you.
Stephanie Johnson. I was developed from a member into a leader. I am now with Vocal Kentucky. I just want to say that I do this work. Glenn Martin, those closest to the problem are those closest to the solution. I struggled with substance use for 25 years. The last 5 years of that, I was homeless. I'll tell you what, locking me up would not have been the answer. As I comb through House Bill 5, I see more wrong than I do that is helpful, especially concerning the camping or the encampment laws. Basically, you're saying, what it's saying, we have to camp in designated sites. Well, first of all, they're inaccessible because of location and distance. And then when you get there, what is around to feed? I mean, are they supposed to hunt too? It's actually kind of a joke because even calling it camping, it's offensive because that's something done leisurely or on vacation. And I assure you, this is not something that was enjoyable or something that I planned for. I promise you that. So instead of spending all of this money, the camp clearings that we do bi-weekly now, unless it's white flag, thank the Lord for that, unfortunately. We're spending this money to punish them as opposed to help them. And if this is a God-fearing country, which it is, that's what we say in our Pledge of Allegiance, and also on the day that the day of the Lord, I think we're supposed to have compassion, and we're supposed to have love and help each other. So evil, you cannot beget evil or wickedness with more evil or wickedness. So we know the problem. What is the solution? It is not to throw someone in jail. It costs more to incarcerate a person for a year than it does to house two for the same amount of time. So it really just makes no sense. The solution, we definitely need more, like we said, for treatment. There are ways, different strokes for different.
Well, now, hold on a second here. Do you seek recognition, Representative Bratcher? Okay. No, that's okay. So
I've got plenty for my heart.
You can ask a question. You just have to go through me to do that. So.
Okay.
No, it's
my
okay.
heart just breaks for this bill. I'm on the grounds. I'm on the ground every day. You know, while we sit in here in this heat and we're getting hot, there are people out here freezing right now, and they don't have places to go to. They can from 9 to 5 while the few resource centers that we have are open. But after that, as the temperature drops after 5, 6 p.m. and on through the night, we have these people out here, and not everybody. There is substance health misuse. There is mental health. There's a plethora of problems, and a shortage, a lack of solutions. And I think instead of focusing on criminalizing, like, you know, as opposed to the crime bill, like we need resolution. Is that it? I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Kaylee Raymer, the Kentucky Policy Center. If you're here, you're recognized. Turn your microphone on, if you would, so the green light.
There we go.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kaylee Raymer. I'm a policy analyst at the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy. I'm also an attorney and a lifelong Kentuckian. All Kentuckians deserve to feel safe in their communities, but the policies proposed in House Bill 5, many of them have been done before, and they will not make us safer. We're all concerned about the overdose crisis in our state, but there is evidence that the policies in House Bill 5 will make it worse. When North Carolina and Colorado increased penalties for fentanyl, their overdose deaths rose dramatically. The drug-induced homicide provisions in this bill are unlikely to capture drug kingpins, but more likely to capture low-level offenders. In New Jersey, 25 of 32 drug-induced homicide prosecutions were against a person who was a close friend of the overdose victim, not a drug dealer. And as has been said before, it's likely that this will scare people from calling 911 for help in the event of an overdose. Research also does not support the many sentencing enhancements in this bill. Longer sentences don't make us safe, and they don't deter people from committing violent crime. In fact, the general public is pretty much unaware of sentencing details, and there's less of an effect when a long sentence becomes even longer. We also know that people tend to age out of criminal behavior, so we'd be paying to keep folks locked up long after they pose any threat to our communities. The sentencing enhancements, they're also not an appropriate response to what's going on in our state. Several recent sources, including the Kentucky State Police Crime Report and the FBI, show that violent crime, is down in Kentucky and across the country, despite a rise during the pandemic. These enhancements, they'll separate more families for longer in a state where 1 in 10 children has already experienced the incarceration of a parent. And the 3 strikes laws proposed in this bill, well, these have been tried many times at the federal level and in other states since the 90s. So experts have had a while to study their effects. And what they found is they're ineffective at reducing crime. They're expensive to implement. They remove sentencing discretion from judges, and they disproportionately harm people of color. If Kentucky were a country, we'd be the 7th most incarcerated place in the world. If more and longer incarceration were the solution to our problems, we would have solved them already. I urge you to reconsider the approaches in this bill and instead invest in addressing the root causes of our problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tara Mosley Hyde, PAR. If you're here, you can come forward.
Hello. Hello and good evening. I think I can say with success that it is evening, and thank you all so much for allowing me to participate in this process. Thank you, Committee Chair and Judiciary Committee members. My name is Tara Mosley Hyde, and I am with People Advocating Recovery, and we are an organization to help remove barriers for those in or seeking recovery from substance use disorder. And it's important for me to say as well that I am also a person in long-term recovery. And what that looks like for me is that since 2011, I have lived a life of resilience, free from alcohol or other substances. And that is about 13 years, give or take, of recovery experience. And every day when I wake up and I get the opportunity to do this work and to continue to elevate the conversation of recovery and what that looks like and what it can look like given the right resources and access to care and services, it's a gift. It's a gift that I don't want to forget, because a lot of people that I know, people that I went to high school with, people that I was in my throes of addiction with, they don't get that opportunity. And that is why I'm here today, is to discuss some really specific provisions from House Bill 5 that are concerning to me and my organization and the folks that I represent and serve. And I also want to call attention to many organizations that, for a variety of reasons, but mainly because they are nonprofit 501c3s that don't have the luxury of large pocketbooks, are not able to be here at 5 o'clock in the evening because they are serving their communities in a variety of different ways. So I do want to call attention to that and just let them know that their voices are here too. Because for a lot of us who work in this space, we don't make a lot of money. We're here because we're volunteers. And that's how I started out in this space in the recovery community. Enhancing the penalty for fentanyl, especially for these provisions that have been included in House Bill 5, in sections 5, 6, 7, and 8. Addressing the opioid crisis is imperative. We know that the opioid crisis, although there's such a systemic larger problem, the opioid crisis was started from lies from the pharmaceutical companies. We know this. There was a lawsuit. We have opioid abatement settlement funds, and these lies perpetuated so much of the problem. We're not offering more solutions. Instead, we're going to try to incarcerate ourselves out of the opioid crisis. We have created, and I say we, and I'm saying society has created the opioid dependence. Our pharmaceutical companies ran rampant in this state. We have done a lot as far as our incredible legislature to re-examine our policies around regulating pharmaceutical companies and the way that we practice medicine in this state. However, we continue to battle the moral failing of whether or not substance use is, in fact, a disorder. This is still a public health crisis, and we are trying to use public safety as a response to a public health crisis. We should work together in concert with one another. And to echo a friend and colleague, I am all about accountability. Recovery is about accountability. Recovery is about holding oneself to a higher standard and to be the voice, to be transparent, and to be honest. We don't want to remove accountability from people that are violating and going out and hurting and harming individuals. Nobody believes that. No one, I promise you, especially from my community. But what we don't and what we know that doesn't work is sending people to prison for long sentences. We know that doesn't work. And currently the bill or the provisions that's in 5, 6, 7, and 8 do that, especially to low-level drug users, people who are just feeding their addiction, people who may be using in groups, people who need intervention, who need resources, who need services, and are unable to get it. Because even though we may have all of these treatment beds, that doesn't mean that everybody gets to access them, because they don't have Medicaid, because they don't have private insurance, because they don't meet requirements, because they were incarcerated for 3 days and were able to string together a couple of days of sobriety time and then no longer meet the criteria to get into treatment. Those are facts, and people are dying to get into those places and are unable to today. In communities across the United States, we have seen this type of response to the opioid crisis and how it perpetuates the stigma of substance use disorder. In fact, as some other colleagues have already suggested, that the research shows that overdose rates increase when we adopt these provisions. So we have seen this past year historical legislation that was passed in this body to help elevate more opportunity and resources for recovery. And we haven't even had time to really see those go into effect yet. Recovery residences and holding out for those equitable quality services. Access to testing strips to ensure that people are safe and have access to Narcan, have access to resources when they need help. The same with the Good Samaritan law, right? Having access and being able to call 911 in the sense of in a case of crisis. And let's be clear too, that not everyone who calls 911 in an overdose experience is somebody with a substance use disorder. That happens when grandma overtakes her medication sometimes too. That those are real life instances that are very important that we need to discuss. House Bill 5's provisions is a continuation of the war on drugs paradigm and the policies that are stemming from the cocaine and crack epidemic, leading to some of the highest rates of incarceration in this country. These are especially concerning from our communities of color who have the highest rates of overdose deaths in the Commonwealth currently. they still have the highest rates of overdose deaths today. We have seen a decrease overall, but if that tells you something, that means that our communities of color are going to be detrimentally impacted by these provisions. That's what we know. I urge this body to consider provisions that will enhance cooperation between public safety and public health. We see incredible examples of this right now in Georgetown, right, with the Georgetown Police Department. We see other really great opportunities with Senate Bill 90. That was a pilot project. Let's talk about putting that in as an ever-long lasting policy. Let's look at adapting deflection programs. And I, again, am not saying that we need to remove responsibility, accountability, or to take away rights and justice for those who are victims. I am not saying that at all. In fact, I'm saying let's make sure that we don't continue on a path that perpetuates more victims, because we can stop this now by having good policy. So I urge this body to reconsider the provisions that are in House Bill 5. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Bailey Allen, United Partners for Women and Children. Not here? Okay. Felicia Newman, Louisville Urban League. Please come forward. Thank you. And you may proceed.
Thank you. Am I on? Can you hear me?
I think you are, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon or evening. My name is Felicia Newman, and I am the Director for Justice and Policy Initiatives at the Louisville Urban League. Before my position at the League, I was a practicing attorney, and most importantly, I started my career in 2005 as an Assistant Commonwealth Attorney in Jefferson County. I served in that position for 6 years and was primarily in the narcotics division, but also prosecuted violent crimes as well. For the next 11 years, I was a criminal defense attorney and worked with family law and domestic violence and child abuse. There are many bad policy positions in this bill for which the League vehemently opposes. I will address this bill, though, from my perspective as a former prosecutor. Frankly, there is absolutely no reason to create any new offenses in our current penal code. We should not create any new offenses because the law has been written in such a way that prosecutors have all the offenses at their disposal to cover all the crimes that a person might commit. Why would we create a carjacking statute when we already have robbery in the first degree? They're asking for the same penalty level. Furthermore, we have the ability, as prosecutors have the ability to enhance most offenses in order to enhance the penalty level. These enhancements include subsequent offender status, possession of a firearm while in commission of a crime. Right now, prosecutors have the ability to enhance a Class D felony all the way to a Class A. Increasing punishments are not necessary. House Bill 5 wants to create a 3 strikes law. Prosecutors can always use the persistent felony offender statute to increase penalties. The PFO statute already contemplates giving harsher sentences to repeat offenders. Furthermore, a prosecutor has the discretion to charge as many offenses as he or she wants. It's called stacking charges. And when you stack these charges, you can or argue to the jury or to the judge that these offenses run consecutively in order to get a longer sentence for certain defendants. We do not want to take away the prosecution's discretion. It would cripple the prosecutor. And you ask, how would it cripple the prosecutor? It would make it harder to settle cases. Prosecutors do not go to trial every day. It is impossible to go to trial on every single case. So I relied on settling cases before trial. If that was taken away from me, where there was already a sentence in place that I could not negotiate with the opposing counsel, it would cause more cases to go to trial, and it would cause delays in justice. The victims would have to wait and wait and wait to get the justice they deserve. It would also cost local governments more money. Finally, the county jails are overrun with people awaiting trial. People are dying awaiting trial. In our country, we are innocent until proven guilty, and people should not be dying to have their day in court. They are living in deplorable conditions, and city governments across the Commonwealth are paying millions in civil suits. We will exacerbate this problem if we continue to incarcerate people. It's been mentioned before, but there has been a 52-year-old war on drugs that has been an abject failure. Study after study show incarceration and higher penalties has absolutely no effect on drug use or drug trafficking. Finally, we cannot continue to incarcerate everyone. It is a purely emotional response. We need evidence-based solutions for crime, not reactionary measures. What makes America different from the rest of the world, like Iran, like China, like Russia, is that we treat everyone in our criminal justice system with humanity. I would put our system, as flawed as it may be, against any of the aforementioned countries where there are no checks and balances for the rights of the accused. And I'd like to end with a quote from the Bible, "Where you did for me, for the least of these, brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Matthew 25:40. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I hope that I have adequately expressed the sympathy of this committee to the Trout family, the Luxemburger family, and the Connolly family. I really, my heart is with you, and I thank you for coming today to give your testimony. I know it's not easy to come out in public and come before a legislative committee to do that, so I do thank you for your strength, and I hope that I've adequately conveyed on behalf of this committee our most sincere condolences to each of you. Is there a motion to adopt House Bill 5 as amended by proposed committee substitute 1? Motion by Representative Flannery. Is there a second? There is a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Banta. Representative Blanton.
Aye.
Representative Bratcher.
Yes.
Representative Bray.
Yes.
Representative Burke.
I make a motion pursuant to House Rule 9 to postpone the further consideration of House Bill 5 to the next meeting of the Judiciary on the 24th at 10 a.m.
And I rule that out of order. You can cast your vote and explain your vote.
I cast a vote of no. There are too many myriad problems with this bill. These are important issues that deserve our time and attention, and we have yet to give them adequate time. The advocates have not been fully heard. The committee has run hours into the evening, and yet there are still issues. So while I appreciate the honest collegiality of Jared, Representative Bauman, you have worked hard on this, and I want to say thank you. We're not there yet. And so I'm a firm no with absolutely no reservations. And until we can get about 30 miles down the road, I'll stay a no. Thank you.
Representative Dietz.
Yes.
Representative Doan.
May I explain my vote?
Yes, you may.
I'm a no today, but I hope that I can get to a yes if we make some changes on this bill. Thanks.
Representative Flannery.
Yes.
Representative Herron.
I'd like to explain my vote.
Yes, you may.
I am a no on this. I do not believe that this is a good piece of policy that we're creating. This piece of legislation has 26 penal enhancements, 11 policy changes, 2 new penalties, and 1 new crime. And with that information, along with the information that we just got from our budget, there's a $16 million cut for corrections, a $14 million cut for juvenile justice, and a $17 million cut for community-based services. This bill also does not have a correctional or fiscal impact statement or report. And in good faith, I just cannot be, I cannot vote on this, so I will be a no.
Representative Cole Carney.
Briefly explain my vote, Mr.
Yes, you
Chairman.
may.
I also appreciate all the work that has been put into this, and I also appreciate Representative Burke's apt description of your honest collegiality. Representative Bauman and I sit next to each other on the floor, and I've had many discussions about this bill and its provisions and my objections to it. I think that the intent, everybody wants safer communities, everybody wants public safety. What I think this bill does not do is address the causes, the root causes of any of that behavior, and in fact criminalizes those individuals that need our help the most. There is a mountain of evidence over the decades that individuals have spoken to and testified to here today that greater incarceration, increased penalties does not result in a deterrence of actual crime. It does not actually result in safer communities. I'm hopeful that maybe we can agree on some legislation in the future that would actually result in safer communities. My district borders Rep. Herron, and we hear about these crimes and shootings and all the time. And I hope we can work together to actually address some of these root causes. A lot of times we discuss how we agree on 95% of bills, and this is one of those bills that we just will not, because philosophically I think we are on opposite sides of it. But I'm hopeful that we can reach some middle ground to really help keep Kentuckians safer. Thank you.
Please cast a vote.
I'm sorry, I'm a no for today.
Representative Lewis.
Yes.
Representative Maddox.
No.
Representative Mosier.
Explain my vote.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all the work that's been done on this. I understand the intent. This is very hard for me because no one has advocated more for treatment and for reentry and for services to look upstream and help people who are in crisis. I have concerns about the fentanyl trafficking piece. I just feel like we're looking at about 10 different bills here. It's too much. I really would like to work with you on some of these provisions. I don't know how the 3 strikes law is going to affect, for example, our persistent felon laws, which we already have on the books. I don't know how it's different from that. I think it doubles down, the 3 strikes doubles down on existing serious crimes that we already have serious penalties for, and it takes away judicial discretion. I think maybe the truth in sentencing bill that we have might solve some of these problems. So, I think that we need to think about a lot of the provisions that are in here. I think that we do have some duplicative crimes being described here. I think we need to better define things like knowingly in the trafficking statute. I think we need to better define reasonable force. So I just think that we can get to a better product here if, the intent, of course, is to keep Kentucky citizens safe. We all want that. I mean, my heart goes out to these families. It's horrific. Nobody wants that, but I just feel like we are trying to do too many things in this one bill. And I think I'm going to be a pass today, but I reserve my right to change my vote based on the work that we can surely get done in this. Thank you.
Representative Nemes.
Quick comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you.
Obviously, I'm a yes. I don't understand a lot of the comments I've heard about it being late into the evening. It's 5:25. Most Kentuckians are still working. Surely their legislature.
I try not to stay out too late.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah.
But surely their legislature can work till 5:30. I don't understand that. I hope they didn't mean that. But I want to just highlight one thing, and that is largely because of Representative Mosier's work and a lot of others, we have more treatment and recovery beds in Kentucky per capita than any other state in the country. So I don't know what a lot of this, we're over criminalizing and we're not talking about substance. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's not looking at reality. So obviously I'm a yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Petrie.
May I explain my vote?
Yes, you may.
I will be a yes.
And to Representative Nemus's point, we have a lot of investment in recovery, mental health issues, trying to assist people the best that we can. To Representative Mosier's comments and her work over time, those are important pieces, and we've done that through Judiciary, through her committee, and on and on and on. When you take a holistic look, there are a lot of efforts. There is another side of that also. If it's not working, we still have to look at public safety. We can't ignore public safety when we're working on other things. Have to do both at the same time. Lastly, so I've heard the first in-person false narrative run, so I want to make sure that we hit this really quickly. Budget-wise, there is no cut to corrections. There is no cut to DCBS. There's no cut to anybody. That's a false narrative. There's nobody losing a job. They're getting more funding. We're increasing programs, and it's a number game that is going to be played, and I understand what the narrative is going to be, but it's not there. We're going to support the recovery. We're going to support the programs. We're going to support incarcerations, and we're going to continue to make Kentucky better or remain a yes.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Sharp?
Aye.
Representative Stevenson? Representative Wilson?
May I explain my vote?
Yes, you may.
I'm a yes. I also want to commend the hard work. One portion that caught my attention was the flea evading. I want to say a great job there to address the problems we heard about today, but also ensuring that not every flea is a Class C felony and that fleeing on foot remains a misdemeanor. I think it shows the thoughtfulness in the bill, the hard work you put in, and that you're not just throwing the book at everyone. So I'm a yes.
Vice Chair Decker?
Yes.
Chair Elliott?
Aye. So with 13 yes votes, 5 no votes, no pass votes. One pass vote, I'm sorry, correct. Thank you for correcting me. House Bill 5 as amended by the committee substitute is passed and will be reported with favorable expression that the same should pass. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
13.